This is something that I've wanted to speak on for quite some time, but to truly just sit with ancient knowledge that comes out until it is embodied as wisdom is the ultimate goal. And so here I am now just spreading this story. This is a big one, so get a hot cuppa, settle in, and be prepared, because this is a story on intergalactic origins. It is a story on ancient civilizations, of some history of Australia that is untold and unknown or hidden. It is the story of the seven sisters from the stars, the sacred Pleadians that we come from. It is a story of ancient Egyptians keeping this data within hieroglyphs in stone walls here in Australia. It is ancient Phoenician scripts and temples in the bush. Again, all here in Australia. And that being the point that we come from Australia. This is the out of Australia theory, and it's not a theory. To me, it is the truth. It is my truth, and that's what I want to make clear. What I'm going to say and explain here is my truth. Everyone has their own. This is just from personal experience, from embodiment, from soul path, soul journey, from source. This is what has flowed through to me. This is what has come through. I'm not even saying it as fact. I'm just saying it as feeling. This is what I want to share, because there is some crazy stuff coming out right now into the collective, and I feel like this would be better received now than it would have in the past. So I'll start off by saying that this, I have a book here I will read and use for reference. This could have started 5 years ago when I was deep into meditation and I asked the universe if I could just have the answer to one thing. I wish for it to be the truth of the human species. Where did we come from? What's our true history? Because I know his story isn't our history, especially here in Australia. It's so corrupt, so hidden. And I really wanted to know. And I also asked as well, while I'm at it, tell me Pachimamba's story. And I can say now, 5 years later, that the more I know, the less I know, as Erica Badu says so well. And I could also say that maybe it started 5 years ago, or maybe it started way back when in the dreaming and has continued out ever since. And I quote what I wrote earlier, has been delicately planned and played out since inception. And so maybe it's that. It's kind of what it feels like. And this is a story of my own personal journey of discovering my DNA. I'll sum it up in the umbrella category as that. This is my story of me discovering my DNA, and as the microcosm of the macro that is the universe, I am an embodiment of the stars, and I really wanted to know that. What does that really mean? And now, whenever I have heard stories, I have listened, I have asked, any Indigenous story to the land, told and kept through the Indigenous Australians, the original wisdom keepers, the ancient ones, the ones who have been keeping this vibration, holding this Lemurian vibration code down for millennia. Every single story of our origins points to the stars. Everything. Every single story comes from the stars. And I will get into, and this will unravel a lot, so stay with me, because eventually the snake will eat its tail, but there's going to be a lot of random ass facts dropped in the meantime. But they're all, it's a great quote by Mark Twain that says, like, all the theories and wild stories about Australia are exactly that. They're absolutely wild and the best kind of myths you could hope for, and they're all fucking true. It's of layered stories, and it's incredible because it all starts here. We're out of Australia. This is, if you look into, I'll get into it, I won't get off track. I'll keep going otherwise I'll lose my flow. If you look into the DNA, now this comes down to the Denisovan or Denisovian, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, I don't really care, but I know what I mean when I'm saying it. So you can look into the details of our DNA when it comes to this. But Stephen and Evan Strong, they're a great reference in Australia for doing this work. Stephen speaks on this with profound emphasis and scientific detail. I'm just skimming past that one. He speaks on how the DNA within 2 to 5% of this is the original peoples, and that comes from Australia. You can also find it in India, in southern India, in the tribes, such as Tamil Nadu. Now that's very interesting because Tamil Nadu comes back up again when it comes down to symbolism and language. So it could be another reference point. But just keeping that going, that the DNA of the Denisonian, I'm pretty sure, Denisonian DNA links to Australia. It doesn't even make sense for it to be out of Africa, which is really intriguing. You can also then, I'll start looking into, we'll start way back. So Rex Gilroy, the Yowie godfather of Australia, is an absolute king, ascended master now, and king when it comes to documenting and tracking the true history of Australia and its very ancient origins and everything that's happened in between, which I'll get into a little bit. But he discusses an ancient race known as the Uru, and they were a culture hero race. Now there's not a lot that I know here. This is a part that I've got question marks all around it because I'm so intrigued to know more about their origins. Are they like cross Pleadians? Are they the Pleadians genetically modified with the first Indigenous that were here, and then that was the Uru and they sort of lived together? Or was it Pleadians that stayed? I don't know. You guys know? Answer me, and you might understand a bit more about what I'm talking about if you keep listening. But the Uru, what he does speak about is that they were a stone building ancient race, and you can see that everywhere in Australia. Let's just point that out. There are stone megaliths everywhere in the Australian bush, fucking everywhere. We'll start by the biggest and probably one of the most powerful portals and true origins of our language, and honestly us as a species, was up in Mullum. And it was taken down. The stone structure was destroyed by a farmer because of threats from the government. But this was bigger than Stonehenge, two big stone rings with so many, I'll leave the rest, I can't say any more, the birds are telling me, I'll leave the rest, but look into that, look into the Stonehenges in Mullumbimby, on the east coast of Australia, as well as Yuruwuwang in Victoria, which is one of the oldest astronomical observatories created. Even here, where I am, there's a giant phallus, there's a giant stone cock, shoots up into, honestly, Orion's belt, which is intriguing because the Native Americans speak of your soul on its journey shooting itself back up into the Milky Way into a certain direction. So very, very intriguing. Also in a lot of the places in France and Italy, there are plenty of stories and still places of stone phallus worship for fertility and honouring the great Shiva, the creator. There's some near me here. There are beautiful, powerful, and Rex Gilroy actually led me to this, as well as a beautiful elder of the area who originally told me this. There is pillars and a big stone battery that charges. Is that a leech on my lip? It is. There's a big stone pillars into the earth, 18 meters high, in an old ancient riverbed that would use the water and then the different kinds of stones as electricity, and it is a huge battery. And that is a battery using the currents, the ley lines of the earth, the frequency of water, and the quartz in the rocks, and all these sorts of incredible things. That's here as well. So there is so much. There's Turkey Dreaming out past Armadale. That is also got incredibly huge stone structures in it and stone monuments. So there's a lot of stone monuments in the Australian bush. All the ancestors and everyone is here right now as I'm telling the story, because I have gone to film it, I've gone to say it, I've wanted to share it for months and months and months, but I needed to just, like I said, embody it first before I then teach it. Then let's move on. So Pleadians. drop the P word, people, other planets and the Pleiadians. Now, there are many types of DNA from other planets, other intergalactic DNA here now interbred within the human genetics on Earth. Pachamama, there has been for millions and millions of years. I'm not getting into that. Gaia is a great channel that goes into a lot of people explaining, retelling, elaborating further on all of this. But I am just going to dive into the Pleiadians genetically modifying and altering the human DNA here, probably about, I'm guessing, 250,000 years ago, because we do know that the human DNA scientifically was modified 250,000 years ago to like certain things such as song and all these other beautiful things. So I have all this evidence to come about this, but we go into how the Pleiadians, the Seven Sisters, came here. Through all of the Indigenous stories, we hear how the Seven Sisters came, Orion chased them. We have these amazing stories about Bayami, these star gods coming here to this planet and breeding with us and teaching us. And so, side note here, when we get to forming of the planet and life as a whole, Pachamama and life on this planet, Dolores Cannon has a lot of great recalls when it comes to this, and they talk about how we were created as an amazing experiment and like just the most beautiful creation here, where we could live out and experience all these things as souls and learn. And then bacteria hit. There was bacteria that hit here, and they talk about how the bacteria affected the planet, affected the growth, and the Galactic Federation were deciding whether to continue, you know, Earth as a thing, or to wipe it out, and they just let us live through, and we have thrived. And that also comes in with another prophet from the Old Testament, so I'll get into that later on. But I just want to speak about that. There's a lot there that Dolores Cannon speaks on. She's got many books, many podcasts. She was hired by the Russians. Like, watch her stuff. Now we come into evidence. Now we bring in the crown, the monarch, like the British royalty. But explaining the bloodline packs, like going into reptilian this and power that, and there's plenty of space in the dark web to search for that, and Telegram groups to look into. Lots of beautiful channels, even on Instagram, that you can find people talking about this sort of stuff. Plenty on YouTube too. So look into that. I'm not here to talk about reptilian bloodline monarch, because we know it. But I have a book explaining, and this book I literally didn't bring across here, but I will show it somehow here. I will do a video of it at the end, add it in. It's over in the cabin. This book I source gifted me from the local bookstore. I went in, and this lovely woman had kept this book aside for me, and there was, I think, either 13 or 21 books. She had them all there, and they were beautiful and big blue covered books, and so old. They were written on like papyrus, man. They were just ancient. And she said these were donated from the Freemason Hall. So that perked me up straight away. I was like, yeah, done. But they were like 25 a pop, and at the time there was like 13 of them. I thought, no, I'll take a few, I'll see how they go. I took one book, got home, read it. It was the first one, thank God. Read what I read in it, and went back, and there was only 2 left. Like a week later, they had gone. So other people are on the mission. That's why you guys are here. But what this book said and explained and explains is that it's written by the British Empire. That's all it says. It goes out after the Great War, because all of the genes are getting destroyed. All of the genetic pools, all of the original peoples are getting destroyed, and we need to maintain this information and keep it somewhere, knowledge. And so it explains and has imagery, proof, pics, everything of how we all come from Indigenous Australian DNA. Like here, we all come from this DNA right here, ancient Lemuria. This is where we come from. And it explains how then from the Indigenous Australians we have Caucasian being actually the last race, eventually trickled down. We have Negro, we have Mongoloid, and they all come from the Indigenous Australians and the bloodline here. And so it talks about how the bloodline was then, and this talks about, was taken and spread around the world. And I think that this comes down to this being Lemuria, and it was the spread of here to other places around the world. Dolores Cannon speaks on this. I also have like proof in fucking carved rock near where I was living as a child that I'm about to get into that says this, that there were a species that came, Pleadians, or as the Irish know them, the Tuatha De Danann, the culture heroes, and as Lemuria is here, the bloodline is then taken out to other parts of the world, to the monasteries of Tibet and the sacred mountains where the knowledge can be kept, and I'll start to get into how these are all linked. So, Lemuria and Atlantis, that talks about this. So Atlantis was where the British Isles, so to speak, are, or where the British Isles, I should say, is where the ramifications of the Atlanteans went. And so the British Isles itself is so, so beautiful. And when you look into all of the stories of the ancient Celtic, they talk about the ancient Picts that came before them. And Picts is actually a term that the Romans put on to the Indigenous of Scotland and the British Isles. Pict meant like tattooed person because they were tattooed warriors, and I get into that further, but they speak of how they were then the Celts were descendants from the Picts, and the Picts were descendants from Tuatha De Danann. And the Tuatha De Danann, you are welcome to look into, say that they came across the seas on saucers from other planets, and they taught. And they were these glowing beings with beautiful eyes and these powerful, powerful, powerful beings, healers and all these sorts of stuff. And then, like I'm saying, in Tibet and the Indus Valley, in all of the ancient Hindu books and all of the ancient battles that are written, they talk about ancient weapons from the stars, which they also then link in down here as well with Lemurian weapons. They talk about all spaceships arriving in the mountains, people, gods arriving from across the seas, like Shiva, question mark, Shiva Indigenous from Australia, question mark. Blue Pict, why was Shiva blue? We know the stories of that. And then actually looking deeper into the Hindu connection with the Indigenous and Indus Valley, being outside of Australia, Indus Valley, then it went down into Mesopotamia, and then that's the story that we know. And all through Tibet, the ancient knowledge in Tibet is it's hidden and kept in the monasteries, in the caves. It is probably the purest, I would say Tibet is one of the places of most purest kept form of Lemurian information outside of Australia. And then, the ancient Irish and Scottish say they come from Tuatha De Danann, which were culture heroes from across the sea, came with silver ships. They burnt them in the mountains to stay. Now that was either in the Indus Valley or that was in a Hindu book, or that was from the Tuatha De Danann, but they spoke about that, which I thought was epic. They burnt the ships just to like commit to the cause, and they stayed. And then, ancient Picts are some of the divine bloodline that came down. Before then, then the Celtic came through as the descendants, which me, but I'll get into my blood at the end of this. Now back to this book and the modern day monarch. This is interesting for Australians. This is really interesting for Australians. So they knew about the pure first people and their genes. They knew that They knew the Indigenous Australians were the first people. They knew about the genes. They knew about the bloodline. And so in this day and age, they chose to take the Irish, the Scottish, and we all just classify, and the Welsh, and they classify them as the English. Try and just really rip you out of your roots. How's that? Just fucking just to completely disconnect you. But they took the Irish and the Scottish. Like, I have deep Scottish blood. We'll get into that. And they took them back down to, and this book says, and I quote, back to their homeland so that they can thrive and breed again with the pure blood of Indigenous Australians. So they speak on how the Anzacs originally were the first blood remixed back with their country and culture that they all came from. So the Anzacs came from Indigenous Australia. We all know we all came. Indus Valley, down into Mesopotamia, Atlantis, the whole route from Atlantis, everything like that. Atlantis to Arthur D. Dunant, Irish, Scottish, this day and age monarch come back to Australia. Then there is, which TOBI tells a lot on, the interbreeding here in Australia from the Irish and the Scottish back because they knew, and I quote, they called them Anzacs. It says in this book they called them Anzacs because they were the original bloods mixed, and they would do better on the land in the harsh conditions. They had a more pure spirit, a greater connection with source, and all this sort of stuff. Fucking crazy, because I've grown up in Australia where that is not what Anzac meant. That is not what I was taught it meant. So this is what this book says, written by the British Empire people. So it's not me. I'm literally telling you what I know through this book, and it's just blown my mind. Good point. Good banana. Okay. Thank you, I needed that. Wow, this is crazy shit. Okay, continuing on. Many different people have come through Australia over the fucking centuries. Thousands of years. Rex Guru has a great book on this. And there's lots of great stories. Fuck, there's so many great stories. When you're like, why is there, this in Australia? It was because it was here from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Now I guess start to get into some evidence. This is great. And I think that they were all coming back here because this was the ancient energy of Lemuria. So we know Lemurians were, they had all of the technology and gave it up. Lemurians gave it up for the power of the heart and the power of the mind. Mu, ancient Mu, the vibrations down here. And Atlantis, then we saw what happened when they continued to externalize that power rather than internalize it. And yeah, so I think that's why everyone's coming here, because this was a place of people of wisdom that hadn't forgotten that they were gods. And this is what the old dynasty Egyptians speak on. And we can start to speak on Egyptians now because the Egyptians have had an intermingled connection with Australia for quite some time now. The Egyptians knew of Australia as Kentiamenti, and in old dynasty it was like the land where man hadn't forgotten that they were gods, and so they came here to learn. Everyone came here to learn from the Indigenous because they were Muse. And so Egyptian old dynasty, now I grew up on Darug country. 7 generations, my children will be seventh generation just within that area, and then honestly can't trace it any more than that in a certain bloodline. Another bloodline my mum's father's bloodline I can trace back. Other bloodlines I can't. It's really, really hard to. Now, when we talk all about this area, so Darug countries, this is the Central Coast. This is the most sacred area ever. There is so much there. Like, is that a sphinx like Lion Island? Look into that, because I read some crazy powerful stuff written by an amazing Indigenous man speaking on Lion Island being a sphinx. Because Brisbane Water, Umina, Pearl Beach, all the street names in Pearl Beach are literally, oh my God, it was all mining. The Egyptians had a mining lease, and it wasn't just like for the precious gems and the golds and the jewels and things like that. It was also for the knowledge and the wisdom, and to be here and to connect with the ancient ones of this country and to learn. But it was all through where I lived, Brisbane Water, Australia. The sacred Bumbara Forest is literally Brisbane Water. Carryong is known now, but it is the Bambara State Forest, Sacred Forest, and it is full of Egyptian hieroglyphs and beautiful rock carvings, Indigenous rock carvings. 4,600-year-old star maps carved into the rocks. There's, what have I got here? Sphinx in water, Sacred Bambara Forest, glyphs, caves. There, if you walk along from Woy Woy to Gosford goes forth, God's Ford. It was all, Brisbane Water was all used with huge, beautiful boats from so many different cultures, as well as Intergalactic. Brisbane Water has one of the highest UFO, I have a story to tell you in this as well, one of the most highest UFO spottings ever. But all around this area, there is so much history. There's Phoenician, so like Jesus, ancient Nazarethian, ancient Libyan, Phoenicians. There are so many relics, carved writings, carved temples, all through the bush of Phoenician, as well as Egyptian, as well as a lot of others, but yeah. So Brisbane Water was a big bay for this. Umina coming into that, the headland there, as well as all down through the Hawkesbury. Like, there's tales of Byami first standing there. There's carvings all through the rocks, or cave paintings all through Coolywong, the Coolywong Trig Trail. There's just cave paintings and carvings and Mundo's feet, which I have dreams of these carved feet in rocks, because there's these carved feet explaining all of the stories of the dreaming and of creation all through this area. It is so sacred. What else have I gotten written here? Creation stories told in carved stone, sacred sites, mother trees, the story of, so this is the glyph story. So this is the hieroglyph story. So in between two big rock walls, there are Egyptian hieroglyphs, and they are old dynasty. There is older glyphs in amongst that tell a far more ancient story, and like I said, Stephen and Evan Strong do an incredible breakdown of this actually on YouTube, and on their website they have many articles about this. It's amazing. But the Egyptian story, first up, it explains how there were two brothers that came in from the old dynasty, and they were on a mission. They were traveling through Australia. They were learning. They were going through a hard time though. There was a drought, and one of the brothers had been bitten by a snake, and he unfortunately died there, and he was buried there. There is a burial chamber there, and I know all this because I've been there. I saw it. I watched my neighbor as a 7-year-old girl climb down and down and down and down and say, it doesn't end, it keeps going, the chamber keeps going underneath the here. And so these walls are covered in hieroglyphs. On both sides, there's caverns underneath. Now it's changed. A lot of people know about it, and some people call it a hoax. There's all this sort of stuff that, as always, conspiracies thrown on this sacred site. This story tells of how, like I said, the brother died there, but it also tells of a more ancient story, and this shows of ships landing, starships. They're UFOs, man. There's like fucking 10 different types of UFOs drawn on these walls, and it shows, I'm not even kidding, like UFO landing, splitting off. So I was talking about then like the different the genes then taken to different parts of Pachamama. Maybe these are all just like my thoughts. but a mothership landing, and like when you break down the hieroglyph, it says something like crystalline mothership lands, and then it shows the beings from this ship like morphing with the stomach of a human being here, and then it creates like an angel being. So pretty much the story of it is Pleadians landing here, genetically modifying with the humans that were here and creating the race that is now. And this is just in the walls, carved, told. Like when you break down what they mean, this is what they mean. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. There are images of all around this area, so all carved through the rocks. There are images of Bayami, great creator coming from the stars in a big canoe. There are beings with the sun and the moon, balancing the sun and the moon, and Orion's belt, and coming from Orion. And Arnie Bev taught that Arimba in the Central Coast is Orion Bar, and that was where the young boys and girls would go to get their initiation for their Orion belt. Very, very intriguing. There's also another hieroglyph. Now, this was discovered by Jake Cassar, and Jake Cassar is incredible when it comes to this area. He's one of the main reasons why it has been protected, continues to be. He educates insanely on the culture of the bush, how to live, thrive, survive, track, eat, everything. He discovered other glyphs nearby to these sacred glyphs. There's also like healing chambers near there where there was like mummification processes and things like that done. And he teaches that these glyphs, he shows, are the first peoples carving into the rock, that the Egyptian brothers are here doing their thing and we're watching stuff going on. And the carvings, the original language, here's where it links back up, looks like Tamil Nadu, the language in Tamil Nadu. Now, Tamil Nadu is very, very incredible. It's like, has the most temples in a close proximity in a certain shape of temples that are literally like hovercrafts that have just landed there. It's incredible. But the language is then linked with Tamil Nadu, and it's carved on the wall here at Gosford. This is interesting because then it comes to like, yeah, the language, the first language and the script, and language being the vibration and the ancient language. And we get into like Frederick Slater. I go into that a little bit more. Okay, then in like the 1930s in Australia, Egypt having like pacts with Australia to mine was a known fact. It was like on the Daily Telegraph, and now it's a conspiracy theory. It's fucked. Period. Like let's just like open our minds to this. Hidden history, man. Tartaria. I'm not even gonna get into this video. There's a separate video. I go into Pearl Beach streets. So in Pearl Beach, all of the streets are called like Ruby Street, Emerald Street, fucking all of these amazing gems that were being mined from the area. Bulls Hill getting taken down the hill and taken out into the boats, whether it be Egyptian, Phoenician, or anything in between. But I'm talking about specifically Egyptian because this is like, we know this. We know this to be true. There's a sphinx in Sydney, like on one of the beaches in Sydney, there is an amazing sphinx carved into the rocks, like facing the ocean. Someone said, that my favorite thing is like, oh, uni students did it. Fucking trust me, I was a uni student, they didn't do it. There's pyramids all over Australia. The Gympie Pyramid was destroyed with Indigenous crew, and quote from a woman's mouth, I was there and watched it. Me and mob watched it. Watched them destroy a temple and a pyramid. So actually on the other side of the Gympie Pyramid that has been destroyed, there is a temple, a Phoenician temple. And there was relics found and it's still there and everything like that. So it's absolutely crazy. Like ancient Phoenician texts, temples, artifacts everywhere. Everywhere. Dingo Tops National Park, literally. The Blue Lotus comes from here. I heard that as well from an elder once who said to me, where do you think the Egyptians got it from? So the Blue Lotus comes from here. So when you start to look at ancient Egyptian, with the perception of it being Indigenous Australian wisdom from ancient Lemuria, snake eats its tail. It's fucking amazing. So blue lotus here, boomerangs in coffins in Egypt, mining colonies inland, big rivers. So there was lots of rivers all up through like heading into like Nundle. Why is it mined now? Because it was a mining town back then. All through New England tableland, there's stone structures. There were so many beautiful big rivers that fed into the inland sea also back in the day. And there's heaps of representations of that. Like, it's crazy. The rock beds, like I found a rock that literally is this like inscribed ancient language of 33 degrees exactly, whether that was from Phoenicians carving it, whether that was from ancient Egyptian, whether that was from like Star, Uru, Pleadian before that, who knows. This is what I'm just like feeling into now. But they're everywhere. There's proof of it everywhere in Australia in the bush. I have here Frederick Slater tells. Look into Frederick Slater. You probably won't find any of his papers. They were all, what were they taken down for? And who were they taken down for? By like the Queensland Tropical Health Department or some fucking bullshit that pretend authority to take down Frederick Slater's writing and his teachings and everything. But you look into Frederick Slater and who is hanging around with at that time, and you can find information on old Australia. And like I said, Rex Gilroy, I'll leave you with people to look into, but Rex Gilroy is one of them. Okay, and then we get into my story. Fuck, I feel like we need to smoke or something to get into this. My story. So, we will start it with, I was born up north. I was born on Larrakai country, up in the Northern Territory, in the north of Australia. And then when I moved to the Central Coast when I was a child, I moved to Indra Road. And this is interesting because Indra is, in the ancient Uru, Indra was one of their gods, which is very interesting because Indra Road backs onto Brisbane Water National Park, which is evidently Bambara Sacred State Forest. So this is, I live here and there's a hill and the hieroglyphs are here. Like there's a ridge line and the hieroglyphs are like on the top of the ridge line. So I could hike to this. I could spend so much time exploring in and amongst the caves, the bush, and I did, man. That's all I did. I built teepees and I played as a child in the bush, and I remember sitting amongst shell middens and just absolutely adoring this sacred time spent in the bush right near this energy that I never knew, but you know, evidently did I? I feel like my soul definitely did. So then this comes down to, Gosford goes forth, or Godsford. You start to look into the Central Coast and all of the connections all through Darug country. It is so powerful to see the language. Language holds everything. As always, language is the key. Brisbane Water also is one of the, like I said, the highest UFO spotting places. And I have so many stories of UFOs as a kid. This is one that I want to tell. This is one that has stuck with me. Let me just make sure I'm keeping it on track for where I'm going to. Yeah, beautiful. When I was a child, I was with my mum and we were in the kitchen and we were overlooking Brisbane Water. So the water's this way, Brisbane Water National Park behind us. I'm looking out over the water and I see this craft come up out of the water and speed towards us so bright it was like the sun. And I quote Mum, I spoke with her the other day, and she said it was like the sun. The sun just shone straight on us, and then in front of us there was this craft. And it was there, and I saw spinning lights, and it just stayed and stared at us, like right there, right outside the glass, right outside the 2 stories, just right there, stared at us. It was a silver disc with spinning lights, and it was just there. And then I remember running out to the other side of the house because it went over the house into the bush near where the hieroglyphics are. And so Mum and I ran out to the other side of the house and we watched it just go into the bush, and it was just like a helicopter landing like in the middle of the bush. I watched lights just descend into the bush, and that was right where the hieroglyphs are. And now this area is so sacred, as we're aware. It is so sacred. In the dreaming, it's sacred. The east coast of Australia, the two dragons carving through the east coast of Australia, like we can bring it back to like the elemental ancient. It's so sacred. And I witnessed these ancient civilizations still continuing to utilize this space as connection points, portals, power spots, whatever it is. I witnessed. And that wasn't it. There was that wasn't all. There was so many incredible hovering bullet-shaped UFOs. Did it respark? No, we're good. Over the horizon. I would watch early in the morning, and they would fade as the sun would rise. They would just slowly like rise up from hovering above, which now I know where I was looking, it would have been over towards like Daly's Point and Kilcare, which is incredible because there's an amazing carved mother tree out towards where is that? What's the place? Bennsville? There's an amazing mother tree carved out in Bennsville. Yeah, incredible stuff. So I'd see UFOs all the way across there and all through the bush. Then that's like, I'm not going to get into what I see out here. This will be another story. Like, I'm going to start telling all of this now because I thought what best place to start than at the beginning with it all. And so let me keep going with that. So I followed my bloodline back as far as I could on my mum's father's side, and I was able to find that the Macduffs come from their royal Scoto-Pict. So I was able to trace my descendants back down to an ancient Pict queen, and now I am saying Pict is where Gaelic comes from. We don't even know the language that the Picts spoke. But Gaelic comes from that, Celtic comes from the Picts. The Picts are my bloodline. My bloodline I can trace back to ancient Picts. And now these were warrior people who would paint themselves blue, and they were covered in tattoos, and they were incredibly smart and connected with Pachamama and aligned with the cosmos that they were above. There is not much known on the Picts at all, really. There's actually not much known on them. We don't even know what they call themselves. We only know what the Romans called them. But I can trace my bloodline back down to those absolute powerful people out in the highlands of Scotland, covered in tattoos and connected to country. So have we really gone far, or here I am doing the same thing now? Okay, I will leave you with this because that's just everything I know. There's no like answer to the end of that story. That's just what I have felt. That's what I feel in regards to all of this. Like obviously the UFOs in and amongst that space, and the hieroglyphs actually saying UFOs on the walls, also very intriguing. Does it continue to be a spot that it always has been for UFOs? My money's on most likely. I will leave you with a few things. Frederick Slater, look into his stuff. Evan and Stephen Strong, they're amazing. Their website is, Our Lost Origins, Our Forgotten Origins. I think that's it. Our Forgotten Origins. Auntie Trudy also makes incredible features on Evan and Stephen Strong's work and all their stuff recently. Auntie Trudy in of herself has so much power and remembrance of the Lemurian code. I've learned so much just from listening to her already. And yeah, listen to all those with the Lemurian codes in their DNA. Me, you, all those that have it. Also, I'll leave you with an Old Testament, the book of Enoch, Old Testament prediction. So Enoch was a prophet. Enoch was a great-grandfather of Noah. So if we're going to live in a world that's based off Christianity, Christianity in the church, then let's at least use the books that were actually written in reference. So Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah, so to speak. And when Noah was born, his father said, this boy is not from this place, he's more from the stars than he is from us. His eyes glow blue, he speaks from a different tongue, he glows of light. What is this? And so he went to his father, and Enoch said, listen, my dear child, Noah is born of the light, and all those born from Noah, we're originally meant to be that. We were originally meant to be this, but then the bacteria came and interbreeding, different DNA, all this sort of stuff. Well, everything had to happen, play out as it did, bury the hatchets in amongst the genetic code, as TOBI says so well, in the universes. That all played out here on Earth, and we're the living embodiments of all of that. And as we are here playing all of that out, we're distilling, and Enoch says that after Noah, we will eventually distill to the point where, yeah, we are the beings of light and love, the light beings, the embodiments of source that we are, and we will be distilled as we were originally made to be. But I had to go through everything else in the meantime. Anyway, here we are now as that, and we are the descendants from Noah, are we not? If we go off Christian and Catholic, after the flood, Noah was able to save a heap of people, all this sort of stuff. We come from Noah, but what? We just forget the whole before the flood story. We just act like those books don't exist. I think it's because it's got giants in it. I think it's because it speaks about the Nephilim. It speaks about the interbreeding from the gods. But, hey, isn't it crazy that if I speak about that, if I speak about the Book of Enoch, and like giants, Nephilim, post-flood, we are the children of Noah, all this sort of stuff, it's still so far-fetched in the mainstream. And yet our entire like court system, our entire life, our school systems, especially here in Australia, are unfortunately all based off Christianity. That is this exact knowledge. So it's almost like you should take this for truth too. But on that note, I'm going to finish a banana and leave you guys with that. That's how I feel. That's what I feel. It's what the truth that I've come to after all these years. And fuck, if you have anything else, any other knowledge, throw it in. I know Stephen and Evan have done some stuff with Billy Carson recently, and that has gotten out to a far more global network. So if there's anyone else that has heard this in a global network and knows more knowledge and wants to fill it in, go for it. As always, I am so here for listening and learning to the Indigenous Australians, the true wisdom keepers, the ancient ones that have kept this vibration going ever since we were first created, the dreaming itself. If there's any further knowledge that wishes to be bestowed upon me from the universe, yeah guys, I'm so open to that, because it's now as a species that we are all remembering our DNA, remembering the truth of who we are, where we come from, what we are as ancient light beings that are incredibly powerful in our hearts, in our minds, our role in intergalactically, our role as a species, as Joe Dispenza speaks of, what we're, the last bite, for the ancestors, too true. As Joe Dispenza speaks of, what we're capable of as humans. And like I said, as the Tibetans, ancient Tibets, in all of the beautiful lamaseries and monasteries have kept the vibration going from the get-go. All the information's there. All the ancient information is there. And if you want to start perceiving it through a different lens of like the ancient Hindu, ancient Tibetan, ancient Egyptian, Indigenous Australian, South American, North American, like I could keep going. They all point to the same thing. We come from the stars, and now it's just up to us to feel into where our true history really is, what our true history really is, and what that then means for our future. Because as we care for 7 generations in the past, we should be caring for 7 generations in the future and thinking for 7 generations ahead. And so here I am now, activating my DNA and speaking this truth because I'm doing it for the 7 generations to come. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and so it is.